a woman who is not a reporter, as far as I can tell, just an average American. And now I imagine it will come out that she's, I don't know, some paid operative for some right-wing outfit. It really doesn't matter. Oh, she does? Is she really? Is she a writer?
She's associate editor.
Oh, she is? Yeah. Oh, okay. I didn't know because it didn't sort of like, okay, yeah, or associate editor, because it was, I'm a conservative, and I went to an Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez rally. I would assume if you're writing in the Daily Caller, you're a conservative, but I guess this was more of like a clickbait type of thing. She writes that I went to a rally against the 7-term incumbent William Lacey Clay. Over the years, I have attended my share of political events. Tea Party protests, a Rick Perry speech on tax cuts.
Electrifying content.
A Ted Cruz rally, and even a speech given by President Donald Trump earlier this year. But nothing prepared me for the stark difference in tone. This sort of reads like a cross between like one of those like Playboy forums I remember. Like this, honestly.
The last thing I was expecting was to be seduced.
The last thing I was expecting at a Democratic Socialist meeting was to meet a hot Puerto Rican.
I'm no nerd, but I'm no nerd. I mean, I've been around, but the last thing I expected to hear from one even. Okay, here we go. Okay, so. Ocasio-Cortez spoke, followed by Bush, that's the candidate, and I saw something truly terrifying. I saw just how easy it would be, were I less involved and less certain of our nation's founding and its history, to fall for the populist lines they were shouting from that stage. I saw how easy it would be, as a parent, to accept the idea that my children deserve health care and education.
Yeah, it's very, very easy to manipulate people with stuff like that.
Well, I want this to I want this to marinate in your brain. That a parent just said, I saw how easy it would be as a parent to accept the idea that my children deserve health care and education.
Jesus.
I saw how easy it would be as someone who struggled to make ends meet to accept the idea that a, quote, living wage was a human right.
Sounds persuasive, doesn't it?
Above all, I saw how easy it would be to accept the notion that it was the government's job to make sure that those things were provided. I watched as both Ocasio-Cortez, and I should say, I didn't read this part because I wasn't sure about it earlier, but she talks about hearing all of these snippets of conversations, okay, that like involved one person praising the strength and dedication of convicted cop killer Assata Shakur.
I'd also like to just co-sign. I would like to praise Assata Shakur, if I may. Thank you.
I mean, all these, whatever. Okay, it doesn't matter. All right, it's very, but whatever. I watched as both Ocasio-Cortez and Bush deftly chopped America up into demographics. Pointed out how those demographics had been victimized under the current system, and then promised to be the voice for those demographics. The movement, Ocasio-Cortez shouted, knows no zip code. It knows no state. It knows no race. It knows no gender. It knows no documented status. In other words, they cut it up into demographics, but then said, the movement's not about demographics. Bush, after saying her piece, noted she was careful to allow speakers from all across all demographics. Why demographics? What the... To make it clear she was not running to represent just one particular group, but all.
My demographics get it.
Lot of demographics.
I can't quite get my arms around whether she's saying that they contradicted themselves or that, because that last sentence says, even though we've allowed speakers to talk about things from different demographics here, we represent everyone. How horrific. Now, as opposed to, let's say, that Ted Cruz rally where like We only have one broad demographic, normal white people, and that's it.
We have one demographic, and other demographics are going to need to quiet
I
down.
left the rally with a photo, in part to remind myself of that time I crashed a rally headlined by a socialist, but also in part to remind myself that there, but for the grace of God, go I.
This is God. Listen, your kid does not deserve health care or the ability to eat. I'm sorry. Just
There's a
wanted
lot
to
of
make sure.
propaganda that, as an example, a kid who has leukemia but didn't work for his health care deserves treatment.
Please?
Don't get fooled by the old Jew or the young PR. Stay true.
Please. Believe me. Listen, you know it's God. I'm a guy.
All right, so
Why can't we use the word slut anymore? This is God.
Jezebels. She, of course, got a ride onto, or a free ticket, I should say, onto Fox and Friends. And here she is. Was she on Fox and Friends? Oh, yeah, here she is on Fox and Friends, talking about the horror that she had witnessed the night before and where she would have gone but for the grace of God.
Conservative, and she went to one of her rallies. Daily Caller's Virginia Kruta, thank you so much for being with us. And you wrote an op-ed about it. Tell us why you went to her rally. What was the interest?
Thanks for having me. Well, I went kind of to see what the fuss was about, really, because, I mean, I've been to conservative rallies before. I've been to a Trump speech. I've been to a Ted Cruz rally when he was running for president. And I just kind of wanted to see, why the message was resonating, because really the socialist message is gaining steam within the Democrat Party.
So based upon what you saw, why are people drawn to this message?
Well, I was listening to them talk to Ocasio-Cortez and also to Cori Bush, who she was stumping for in St. Louis. And they say things, they talk about things that everybody wants, especially like if you're a parent. They talk about education for your kids, health care for your kids, the things that you want. And, if you're not really paying attention to how they're going to pay for it or, the rest of that, it's easy to fall into that trap and say, my kids deserve this. And, well, maybe the government should be responsible for helping me with that.
Mm-hmm. Virginia, as a conservative, when you're sitting in that
Pause it for 1 second. I mean, does it feel like as she's even saying these words out of her mouth that she's about to go, hey, wait a second.
Virginia, as a sociopath, how do you respond to the basic human sentiment that children shouldn't starve and people should have health care? This is pretty easy for people to fall into.
I like how she says, but they don't talk about how you're going to pay for it or any of that.
You can kind of see the gears turning in her mind right now.
Right? Like she's just going like, God, it would be nice if my kids could get health care. Continue.
For your kids, health care for your kids, the things that you want. And, if you're not really paying attention to how they're going to pay for it or, the rest of that, it's easy to fall into that trap and say, my kids deserve this. And, well, maybe the government should be responsible for helping me with that.
Mm-hmm. Virginia, as a conservative, when you're sitting in that audience or standing in that audience and you're listening to that message, how did it make you feel? Were you angry? Were you more drawn to that?
I was mostly uncomfortable because I was surrounded by a group of people who were talking about how they had gotten involved because they were tired of being angry all the time. And it seems like so much effort to be angry about everything instead of to focus on what you could do to change it.
I didn't get the last part. That was very confusing.
Just say that?
Yeah,
there were people at a political rally to support candidates who were going to go out and change things. And they said that they were there because they were tired of being angry. And I just think it's weird that you would be angry and not go out and do something to support it.
She's really phoning it in here.
No kidding.
Like, if I didn't know better, I'd think she were a plant from the DSA.
I mean, it's possible. Or I think it's possible we're watching sort of like a slow rolling
awakening.
sort of like an awakening / nervous breakdown. I think that's possible.
It reminds me of how Dave Rubin talks about how the left is so negative.
Right.
She goes to a Bernie or Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez thing and gets the exact opposite.
Precisely. Especially, and then maybe when Tucker's like, "You're fired and you don't have health care anymore." Maybe that will be the next lesson.
Right.
For her
Exactly.
In her ongoing nervous
now,
breakdown.
the notion of conservatives being afraid that the left in some way offers some vision that is like too sugary and too the trap here is that it actually sounds great, is an old construct. In fact, back in FUBAR, the book that Stephen Sherrill and I wrote back in 2006,
I'm not familiar with that.
Oh, well, we had a clip. Let's put that clip up there. Not a clip, a story about a guy named Dr. Paul Cameron. He was the founder of the Family Research Institute and the unfortunately named ISIS, which was the Institute for the Scientific Investigation of Sexuality. This is a real...
I think ISIS might actually have something that's similarly named and programmed.
Right. He was a huge figure in the right's attempt to marginalize LGBT people. And this is a clip of something that he wrote. This is from, I think it might be an interview that Robert Dreyfuss did with him back in 1999. If you isolate sexuality as something solely for one's own personal amusement, and all you want is the most satisfying orgasm you can get, and that's what homosexuality seems to be, then homosexuality seems too powerful to resist. The evidence is that men do a better job on men, and women, I'm not clear where this evidence lies, but it's possible.
He's reviewed the evidence, okay? He's seen a lot of documentaries about this.
And women on women, if all you're looking for is orgasm, I'm convinced that lesbians are particularly good seducers. It's pure sexuality. It's almost like pure heroin. It's such a rush. They are committed in almost a religious way. As opposed to the religious people committed in a religious way.
So this guy was like literally soliciting small-scale donations to watch porn all day?
And they'll take enormous risks, do anything. Marital sex tends toward the boring end. Generally, it doesn't deliver the kind of sheer sexual pleasure that homosexual sex does.
The era of the pajama boy is over.
I think in the book we said our apologies to Mrs. Dr. Cameron. But that's the whole story here, right? Like the problem with the idea as a parent, you're susceptible to this message that your kid deserves health care and an education. And it's so alluring that you will actually maybe sign up to have your kid get health care and an education. And then your kid will have health care and an education.
Part of me wishes I was still religious so I could tell that woman that she's probably listening to Satan when he leads her away from this. Like there, but for the grace of God, go away. That's not God.
That's Satan. Well, there you have it, folks. The Daily Caller. But you know what's awesome about that story is it is the most clicked story, I would bet, on Daily Caller, probably for the week. And so they're going to do more of these. Like I went to an AOC rally, and she promised that people would get the opportunity to go to college for free.
And let's not shy away from this. Not only do they deserve college, they deserve pure heroin orgasms. We're not going to shy away from it anymore. Pure gay heroin, pure, not stepped on, straight from the poppy fields of Pakistan.
That'd be a good slogan. Yeah. Pure heroin orgasms.
Pure heroin orgasms. Okay, look, in my opinion, you go to Denmark, there's a lot more pure heroin orgasms, and there's no reason why we shouldn't have that here.
All right, look, I want to get in.